Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Azure podcast with your host Sam.
And Alan,
Hello, Alan. How are you?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Obviously, we've had quite a busy week in the world of Microsoft. How's work and life been for you?
Yeah, it's not been too bad. Busy, doing some logic apps.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's going into your area of expertise.
yeah. I don't really like this. My job security is on the line here. It is quite incredible seeing you build a quite a meaty logic app that's being used in production and how you've gone through the process of doing that. And I think we can pretty much say that it's not a trivial process that you've built, is it? It's quite
No,
involved.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and it's also really good because of the business value for your customer. It really does show that you can you can build without needing a developer. But yeah, but it's true, isn't it? It's the proof's in the pudding. Adding business value without any development. I say
I guess,
no development. It is still building flows and logic, right?
yeah, it is still low code, so
Yeah.
you're safe.
So yeah, so there's some level of code there. Well, I have an announcement to make. Yeah, do you know what day it is today?
Thursday.
Yeah, it is Thursday. But do you know the significance of this Thursday?
Not off the top of my head, no.
It's International Podcast Day.
Ah, cool.
I didn't know that until this afternoon when I looked on LinkedIn and there were people talking about it. So we are inadvertently, we were supposed to record this last night and now we're recording it today. So yeah, welcome everyone to International Podcast Day. Support your podcast creators.
The irony is it's not even Thursday; it's Wednesday. But hey,
Oh, is it? Exactly. That goes to show how my week's going this week. Anyway, right. So, what are we going to talk about this week, Al?
so with Ignite being last week, I guess we're going to be doing some updates on some of the things that we're interested in because there was loads, quite a few things that came out. So
Yeah. For everybody listening, Ignite was last week, and and I've written this in the show notes, but it still boggles my mind how much is actually released, and considering the world that we live in at the moment, one might think that, Microsoft are, and a lot of, not just Microsoft, but a lot of companies are scaling back what they're building, and their delivery has been impacted. But from what I can see, Microsoft is firing on all cylinders, right? The amount of updates that we've had, and not just little updates, like substantial, product and feature releases.
yeah, absolutely. They just kept going.
Yeah, exactly. So, for everyone listening, you can find a link to the book of news in the podcast show notes. The book of news is something that they do, and they just list out every single change that's happened, and it's really good because it's all categorized, and it's actually translated as well. So you can jump in, look for all of the updates that are specific to your area without having to watch hundreds of hours worth of video, if that's not what you're into. Okay, so yeah, and as Al said, we're going to just go through. This is just going to be all about Ignite, all about the news and the new updates. So there's not really going to be any meaty subjects in here. We're just going to review because there is so much to talk about. If we don't talk about it in one episode, we're going to be talking about it at the end of all of our episodes for about 15 episodes, aren't we? So
Yeah, until the
yeah,
next Ignite.
yeah, until the next Ignite. Or well, what's the next one? Is it Inspire the next one? I suppose, or is it Build?
It's probably build now.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I wouldn't doubt if Al's completely, all over Build next time. Only joking, Al, you're not a developer yet. Anyway, right, let's talk about. So, what we're going to do is we're going to first talk about Azure news, then we're going to talk about some 365 and some security and compliance. I know that this podcast is the Azure podcast, but it's kind of melting into anything Microsoft at the moment, isn't it, Al? So we're going to talk about all three. Okay.
Yeah, well, I've got to talk about something, haven't I?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so I'll start off with the first one. The Microsoft Bot Framework, we've had that for a long time now. It's quite a seasoned product. It's been through a number of revisions, and it gets all the time. It's getting better and better. Microsoft have released a new open source tool for building bots visually. It's You can use it inside of the Virtual Assistant Solution Accelerator. So I believe this is a plugin for. Let me just find the link. Sorry, I'm not very prepared with this one. I had my notes. Um, 1 second.
I have had a brief look at this a couple of months ago, I think, when it was in preview. It seems quite
Is
good.
it just a set of like an accelerator bundle, like a package that they give you to get started with building bots? Is that what it is? It's not, because it says that it's an open source tool, but the
Yeah,
documentation goes nowhere actually.
so the view that I had of it was that it was it was a tool that you could launch and it would generate the code behind the bot. So you basically build your conversation in that tool, and then you could send it or um, deploy it directly up to the Azure service from that tool as well.
Oh, got it. Okay, so it's a desktop application. Got it. So it's like a visual bot builder. So kind of like the Logic apps and the Flow experience that we have on the web, and also now in Visual Studio Code, I suppose I should say. So yeah, so exactly like you've just said there, you can visually build your bot's interactions and the logic that it has inside that bot without having to do code, which is again quite scary for me. So yeah, great job, Microsoft. That GitHub repository is very popular. 351 issues at the moment, so I'm guessing they're getting a lot of new users. Sorry, onto that. We've had a couple of a sort of a big update to Azure Cache for Redis. So Redis, if you don't know, it's an in-memory key value store. Microsoft have had a managed service that can host Redis for you. Now they have 2 extra tiers. They already had 3, so we've got 5 now tiers. And this is the Enterprise and Enterprise Flash tiers. And essentially, these are the same Redis clusters that we had before at Premium, but they include more Redis specific functionality. So you get Redis time series for time series data. So I imagine that's for financial modeling and IoT. Redis search, Redis Bloom. And also on the Enterprise Flash version, you have Redis on Flash. Now, I've never heard of Redis on Flash, but I assume from its name, it's, even though Redis is in memory anyway, so I don't really understand. But the kind of nuts thing for me on this is at the bottom of the pricing comparison table. So you've got basic, standard, and premium, right? So premium can go up to 40,000 client connections, which is a little bit mental anyway in itself. But enterprise and enterprise flash just have dashes in the maximum number of connections.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, I don't know whether to take that as somebody hasn't filled out this table yet, or it's unlimited connections, which seems a bit mental to me. And yeah, so an enterprise flash can go up to 1.5 terabytes of memory as well, which is,
Wow.
could you imagine? Could you imagine the amount of data you can put in 1.5 terabytes of memory? So yeah, very thing. And also the SLA and availability goes from single digit nines up to double digit nines as well. So yeah, so basically a lot more capacity and resilience there. My third item, and this is probably the one that affects me the most and I'm most excited about, Cosmos DB. Now, Cosmos DB is an insanely fast NoSQL database solution. So, Alan, I don't if you know if you're aware of what a NoSQL database is, but instead of having a structured database with columns, you can essentially put any object into your data store that you've got or your collection. So you can say, and generally we would store like JSON, JavaScript objects inside of our NoSQL stores.
Okay.
But what it allows, the great thing is that every single, as long as you have like a common key between all of the items, you still get good performance, but you can have any schema. So it's for the way that we've built software for sort of forever with relational databases is sort of been thrown out the window in NoSQL. So it can, in some respects, because it doesn't have the constraints of building a defined schema, you can. It's a lot more flexible in how you store and retrieve data, and it can make your sort of your database layer inside of your application a lot more simplistic. But it doesn't work well for everything. But when you've got an application for it, NoSQL can help some of your pains of relational database systems. Anyway, so a Cosmos DB can you create a collection and it can scale, across the world, right? It's this it's this geo redundant, and the throughput is insane, and it's absolutely mental. But the sort of not the restriction for me, but one of the sort of hurdles is it's quite expensive to use it, right? So don't quote me on these numbers, but when I looked at it, it was like $25 per month per collection. And if you imagine, if you've got Azure table storage, you can just add a new table of data, can't you, for free? And then you pay like a storage price, don't you? So imagine if you had like 20 tables of data, you would have to, pay for each one of those collections, because what Azure is doing is it's provisioning throughput for you on a either a single region or a multi-region availability. So they're sort of guaranteeing your speed, and and the SLA is 3 digits of 9. So it's like a proper enterprise NoSQL solution. Anyway, that is Cosmos DB. But the big change for me is now they are doing a serverless consumption-based billing model. So you can get started for nothing, and you then pay for every single time you run a transaction through it, or So I'll give you an example. For 1,000,000 serverless request units, you only pay 28 cents, right? So whatever an RU is, I'm guessing an RU is like a read or a write, and you might be able to pull, multiple records back in one RU. I assume it's every time you hit it, I'm guessing. And so, so what this means is that if you're, say, a startup, you can deploy Cosmos DB now and pay nothing from when you start. And then, yes, you may pay more for an RU than you would if you provisioned it. But, if you're a smaller company or a startup, you don't know what your traffic's going to be. You don't know how much demand is going to be on it, but you want it to be scalable, right? So you don't want to, I would prefer to use a solution like this, because it's, it can be across multiple regions. It's highly redundant. It's highly available. So they've made it serverless, which is great. And I think it's this Microsoft is going through this. We've got serverless SQL now, which I don't really understand. It's like a bit like voodoo magic to me. I don't really understand how that works. But we've got serverless SQL now. We've got serverless Cosmos DB. So it's really just destroying these barriers to entry, that people might have to use these, amazing Microsoft technologies, which I think is awesome. And I'm really excited for serverless Cosmos DB. It's really good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. So thanks very much, Microsoft, for not, charging us more than I assume that, if I think, I don't mean this in a big-headed way, but if I'm struggling with the cost of Cosmos DB for my clients, I assume a lot of other people are also having those issues as well, which is why serverless is popping up. So yeah, I'm going to just continue on with the Azure news. So in September, so they're going to add 2 more availability zones, in existing regions. So we're going to get Canada Central and Australia East as well. And that takes the total number of availability zone enabled regions to 14. So I assume this means that in Canada at the moment and in Australia, there is not, they're not availability zone enabled regions at the moment. So that's going to be really good for people that host, obviously, in those countries. And we've also had big update for .NET. So .NET, because .NET has been going through this change in its what's the best way to describe it? It's going through an evolution, .NET, because we had the older .NET framework that only ran on Windows. Then Microsoft created .NET Core, which ran everywhere, and then everyone was like, well, how do I create apps? Some people were still using .NET Framework, some people using .NET Core. .NET Core doesn't include everything that .NET Framework has, so it was all a bit... I don't want to criticize anybody, but it's a bit disjointed, right? Not everybody knew what they should be writing in, what the benefits, and it was getting kind of confusing. So anyway, the new version of .NET is going to be called .NET 5. Ooh.
Didn't see that coming.
.NET 4... Well, .NET Framework 4, and then we had ASP.NET Core. Well, we had .NET Core 1, 2, 3, 3.1, 3.2. Like, so anyway, let's just you don't need to know anything else. You just need to know that the new version is .NET 5. It's now at release candidate stage, and it's going to be generally available on November the 10th. So from that point forward, we're all just going to be on .NET 5. Except for everybody in the enterprise, because they'll have to deal with legacy apps. So they'll still be on .NET 3 forever. Anyway, sorry. I'm sure there's people listening that know that pain. So it's... I think that's a really good update, because it's going to make things a lot clearer. You know that from building function apps, right? It can be quite confusing, the different environments, and making sure that everything is using the right versions, and the naming is, in my opinion, confusing. It's not as simplistic as it could be.
Well, we've had conversations, haven't we, about briefly and at high level for me to understand about the
don't say it like that.
to talking about the core, because I didn't realize there was a core at one point. So
I mean, it's just I think it's just good. It just shows that they've understood that problem is there, and they're bringing it all into one cohesive and consistent brand. So it's gonna make things a lot more simplistic. Okay. The last one I've got, I need to bring up my notes for, but do you want to just jump ahead and give us some... Oh, actually, I've got I've got another page. Ignore that. I've got another page. Right, so sorry, I've got 3 pages of Azure news because there's so much. Backup Center, Alan. Have you had a look at Backup Center yet?
No, not yet.
So Backup Center is like a backup center for your backups. It's like backups for your backups for your backups. So the idea of Backup Center is to be able to back up your backups across even across tenants, right? So it's like one step removed again. So if you imagine a large organization, they may have multiple subscriptions, obviously, like maybe potentially hundreds of resource groups, hundreds of subscriptions, maybe even multiple tenants, for different, if you imagine different regions might be on their own separate tenant, potentially, I don't know, everybody has a different, everybody has a different...
mergers and acquisitions and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what you can do is you can pull together all of your backups into one, well, backup center as they're calling it. So you've got one cohesive view about what is going on across the whole organization. And what I find quite interesting as well is it currently supports Azure virtual machines, obviously, SQL inside of virtual machines. Azure database for Postgres SQL servers, and Azure files. So it's pulling together all of these different backup, because we've currently got backups anyway, haven't we? So it's pulling together all of these different backups into one single place, which is really good from my perspective. I don't really have any customers that are that big, but I can imagine that backup orchestration in the cloud is not a simplistic thing when you've got maybe hundreds or thousands of servers, and the structures that they must be behind.
Yeah, I'm sure that's definitely going to help those server admins out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my brethren. Well, not my brethren, more your brethren. Well, not your brethren from what you used to do, but yeah, definitely. So yeah, and the last one that I've got is Azure Resource Mover. So that allows you to basically port elements from Azure between regions more easily. So if you imagine at the moment, if you want to move, oh, my Teams has restarted. I assume that at the moment, if you want to move, a virtual machine between regions, that isn't very simplistic, unless you can do a cross-region backup and restore. And when I say not simplistic, I mean from a Microsoft standpoint and its tooling, right? Because how would you go about doing that now, Alan, if you had a virtual machine and you wanted to move it to a new region? Let's say you wanted to move it from the UK to the US. What would you do?
I expect it to probably be back it up and then restore it. I expect.
Yeah, but I'm guessing, but you can only do that in your local regions, though, can't you?
Yeah.
I don't think you can go I don't think you can go across the pond. I don't think. Anyway,
Yeah.
irrelevant. But this basically allows you to plan and monitor, you moving your resources across regions. So again, quite a so the list of supported resources are VMs and their disks, NICs, availability sets, virtual networks, public IP addresses. Now that's cool because if you've got a specific like IPv4 address that you've got, you can move it to a different region. That's really cool. Network security groups. I assume network security groups are quite easy anyway because they're quite easily scriptable, I would assume. Internal and public load balancers and Azure SQL databases and elastic pools. So that's epic because if you imagine if you had like I've got a customer with a SQL Elastic pool, and you wanted to move the region, I'm not sure that would very scare me. I wouldn't want to. I'm sure this tool works perfectly, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't be looking forward to doing that migration. So if there is a tool that's supported by Microsoft to do that. And just to make it abundantly clear, it's currently in public preview. So don't use it in production just yet, but definitely cool to see that that feature is coming, which is great.
Yeah, it's good. I think you could move some things across. Well, it's definitely subscriptions at least. I don't know about regions like you said, but
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a bigger list of services that could be moved now.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely in a more structured way, right? Like they're actually saying, we actually support you moving these SQL, databases across region. And that isn't, that's not, because, so it says here, move resources between availability zones in the same region. And I think, because you can do that. No, you can't go, because UK South and UK West are the same region, right? The
Correct.
region is UK. So we've been able to do that in the same region, but we haven't been able to go between regions. I think that's what it is, isn't it? That's like that's the backups that you get. You can say I want to have, I want to enable, but I suppose it is geo redundant. So I don't know if you can. I can't remember the exact setting. It's been a while since I've set up a like a
I mean, for SQL, you could probably, from what I can remember about it, is that you could obviously replicate that database to another SQL server that could be in a different region. But that
yeah.
synchronization is, or if you're going to move it that way, if you've got terabytes, petabytes of data, it's going to take ages.
Well, it'll be interesting. I need to go and have a play with this because it'll be good if it can support for SQL databases. If it can support like an incremental move. So you do a migration one day and you just do the difference on the day that you go live. That would be really awesome. But I don't know if this is, cut all connections to the SQL database, migrate its IP address or whatever, and then fire up your application back on it. I don't know. I haven't actually looked. I haven't actually looked into it anymore. Let's. Yeah. So yeah, well maybe if I get to use it in production, we'll do an episode on it. That's pretty much all my Azure news. I mean, there is loads more Azure news out there. This isn't. There's so much stuff, and I apologize if there's anybody from Microsoft listening. You're probably not, but from any of the product teams that have spent the last probably 18 months building all this stuff, and I've completely glossed over it. But it is just a high level walkthrough of the bits that I thought were the most important to me. Yeah. Anything from that, Alan, that you want to comment on, or?
No, some of it goes over my head, to be honest. But yeah,
So I suppose let's move on to 365 now. Do you want to take us through 365, Alan?
yeah. So this is probably more for the IT pros out there than the productivity side of things. There is, like Sam said, there is tons of stuff that's come out, and trying to choose some of it. I mean, if I ever, this wasn't what I was going to talk about, but just quickly that they've brought out, Cortana voice assistants has come out quite a lot across 365. Reading your emails, the daily briefing.
Thanks, Cortana.
Yeah, the daily briefing to tell you that you got a task to do and things like that.
Is daily briefing out to everybody now?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
it's generally available. It's GA now.
Okay.
For the M365 enterprise users, at least.
Okay.
But yeah, they've brought out Cortana for playing your emails, and there's a new chatbot based app for Windows 10 from the look of it.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, so the stuff I'm going to talk about is Microsoft Tunnel. Have you heard of that, Sam, yet?
No, but I'm guessing you're going to tell me about it.
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you?
I hope so. I hope so.
So on mobile devices, I'm talking about Android and iOS. There are various. Sometimes you have applications that need internal access to file servers, because you're part way through your cloud migration, or you can't leave that data. Kind of goes on to our previous cloud versus on-premise conversation. So so sometimes you need a VPN, and there are VPN providers out there. Checkpoint, Cisco, F5, etc. There's some various other ones, enterprise. But Microsoft have brought in their own called Microsoft Tunnel. So this is all included in your Microsoft Endpoint Manager and all your Intune licenses. So you can basically VPN your Android and iOS device to on-premise applications for included in your licensing. Not technically free.
What about bandwidth? Like data transfer. You don't pay for that?
No, because in essence, I'm guessing I've not looked fully into it. But there's going to be a on-premise server that basically it connects to.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, no, you don't pay for any bandwidth or anything like that, and that's currently public preview.
Excellent.
So sticking with Endpoint Manager, um, beforehand you couldn't really manage VDIs or the Windows Virtual Desktop estate with Intune or Endpoint Manager now, and that's now become public preview. So now you can manage that VDI estate with Intune and keep it all up to date, etc.
Wow, that's cool. So how do people manage that before? Manually?
Yeah, well, I think it would have been like Config Manager or SCCM,
Okay.
or now called Microsoft Endpoint Config Manager now.
Oh my god, the names.
I know.
The
Yeah,
names.
you wait till
Yeah.
later.
Okay.
um, so yeah, that's a big step. It only is for hybrid joined devices still, so it's not for Azure AD joined only. And I think that's mainly because, I don't think it came out, or it might be in the pipeline, but Windows Virtual Desktop currently doesn't support Azure AD joined only management yet, but I'm sure it's going to come.
Okay.
So once that comes, then it will be, you don't have to have a AD controller to manage, for them to be managed with.
Okay.
So the last bit in the Office 365 news is around Mac OS, and
Oh, Mac.
yeah,
What are you
not
doing
Windows.
talking about Mac on an Azure podcast? What sort of world do we live in? Actually, if you said that at the start of 2020, you might say something completely different. But yes, yeah, go on with your your Mac speak.
So they're bringing in a new first class management experience for the Mac OS. So it's kind of bringing it. I think it's starting to bring it in line with some of the capability you have in Windows. So it's bringing a new enrollment experience and seamless single sign-on across their
Okay.
apps.
Good. Good.
So
Good.
yeah, and that's
If I had a
I think
pound for every time I had to enroll a device and then log into, to be fair, the Office apps aren't bad, but it's when you got to go and log into Office, let's say Word or Outlook or something like that, and then oh no, let's say you open Word first, you do Word first, and then Word, Excel, PowerPoint, they're all good, yeah. Then you open Outlook, and it's like, oh, I've got a mailbox. Do you want to add it? And you're like, yeah, of course I do. I just want to open Outlook and get access to my mail. And then it's like, okay, that's done. And then you open Teams, and it's like, okay, yeah, you got to log into Teams. And then it's like, oh, I've got to do OneDrive now. And it's like, I don't know if I'm doing it wrong, but there's like 4 logins that you've got to do, Plus, you've already done company portal, right? So you've already gone through, you've logged in with your federated Apple ID, you've logged into Intune Company Portal, you've logged into Word, you've logged into Outlook, then you log into Teams, then you log into OneDrive, and then you're like, my 6 Microsoft logins to get my machine up and running. So I assume that's what they're talking about here. They're going to align all that authentication and make it seamless.
Yeah, and it might be down to the underlying operating system giving it the capability as well. So
Okay,
it's
yeah.
not necessarily always Microsoft.
No, I know, no, I'm not, and I say that, I'm just being obtuse,
Yeah.
I'm only, I'm only messing, but yeah, I think it is also, good to point that out because there is a lot that Intune can't do unless the machine is supervised, right? And that is down to, and I believe that's down to an Apple Mac OS restriction in terms of getting complete control of that device, right? So it's not just it's not just Microsoft.
Yeah, I think it's probably tying in with the new version of Mac OS coming out. I expect some new
Yeah.
APIs and
Well,
or features.
I saw that there's going to be a new version of Outlook, so I assume that new version of Outlook, might be better tied in and stuff like that. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, they are giving that a refresh. There's something else on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the sort of brief or few things from 365. Again, there was loads on there, but I've not had a chance to have a look at it because I've really been stuck into the security and compliance side of things.
No, that's cool.
So yeah,
Oh
let's
yeah.
move on. If you got you're not looking at the other bit that you had.
No, I'm just gonna leave it.
Okay.
I can't find the documentation for it.
Okay. So let's move on to security and compliance. So the one big thing is that Microsoft have decided to bring some new features in for their detect and response, and they've called it now an XDR, which is extended detection and response. So this is moving Microsoft Defender, and now they have rebranded all of their majority of their security products around 365 and Azure.
Oh, so wait. So it's called the XDR,
So that
but
the solution is their solution is they have an extended detect and response XDR solution, but they've rebranded everything under Microsoft Defender.
okay, right,
So
okay.
so it's split in. So it's initially there's two sort of sides.
Wait. They've renamed ATP to Microsoft Defender for Identity. Okay, got it. Okay, right.
Yeah,
So they've
yeah,
they've got Defender and all the different categories of product, I suppose,
yeah.
that it
So
covers. Yeah.
so they've got Microsoft 365 Defender, and I'll talk about all the products underneath that.
Okay.
And they've got Azure Defender, which in essence is the security center. Is now being called Azure Defender.
So will that say Microsoft Defender for Azure? Is that what it's called, or is it called something?
No, it's just called Azure Defender. That one.
Oh my god. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on.
So
But wait. I'm looking at the list. I can see it here, right in front of me. But the Office 365 one is called Microsoft Defender for Office 365.
no, there's yes. So they've got Microsoft 365 Defender, which includes all of the sub products. So things like Office 365 ATP is now being called Microsoft Defender for 365. That's where that's there.
Yeah.
Microsoft Defender ATP, Advanced Threat Protection, is now being called Microsoft Defender for endpoints because now they're covering Android and iOS, or will be.
Okay. Yeah.
Azure ATP, Advanced Threat Protection, which sounded like it did stuff in Azure, but actually it was looking at on-premise AD user behavior. So it could have done with a rebrand anyway.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's just this whole slide that we're looking at is just all about naming, isn't it? Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
But,
Yeah.
yeah. So they've called that Microsoft Defender for Identity, which does make more sense.
Okay.
But yeah, so they've kind of done a rebrand on that, and there are other capabilities in between those.
Right. So basically, in essence, like you say, all of these different services that we had before are all being rebranded under the Microsoft Defender, brand inside of Microsoft. So
yeah.
So it's everything is Defender, and it's just different products for different areas of the ecosystem.
Yeah. So if we talk about the Azure side of things, so let's move to Azure Defender. They're talking about the enhancements that have come out are protecting SQL database and virtual machines anywhere.
Nice. I like that.
So that's Azure Arc support.
Yeah.
So it really, I think it's just Azure Security Center for that part.
Yeah, and Azure Security Center is insane. Like, as in, I think we did a podcast on it.
Yep,
Didn't we?
we did.
Yeah, it's. I think it's my favorite Azure product. I'm gonna say that, and it sounds ridiculous, right? But I actually think it is. It's just awesome for what you get for the money, and now you can have that experience outside of Azure. Is exciting, even though I'm never going to use it, but it does sound quite exciting.
Yeah. So that protecting SQL database is the update is that it can now protect them on premise and in multi-cloud environments. So it is anywhere. So it could be another cloud provider.
Yeah. Well, in essence, just thinking about how SQL databases work, all it's really doing is connecting to the SQL database and looking at the query logs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So as long as you've got SA admin access to the DB, it doesn't surprise me that they can. I mean, obviously might have wanted to keep it before for a unique selling point of the platform, but it's great that. And again, I think that's just them looking and saying, well, we know everybody can't put everything into the cloud. Like not every single workload makes sense to go into the cloud, or it's not ready to go into the cloud yet. So we'll help you, even though we know you might not ever bring that workload to the cloud, and you can still pay them to to look at it, right? So they're winning either way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the other part that's been enhanced is the protection for containers. So that's with Kubernetes, and
Okay.
apparently it's been called Azure Defender for Kubernetes.
Well, at least it's following the correct naming, I suppose.
So it looks like it includes Kubernetes level policy management, hardening, and enforcement with admission controls. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. If have you ever used Kubernetes, or do you know much
no,
about it?
no, I know what they are,
The
but yeah,
the the configuration is it's pretty involved, and I can imagine it's quite hard to administer and harden. I assume that there's a lot of people because it's quite flexible. You create your configuration, you can architect your Kubernetes cluster however you like. Like one of the points of it is like load balancing. Do you have load balancing within inside of your Kubernetes cluster, or do you do it outside of it? And things like that. I mean, that's not maybe something that they're going to look at, but I can definitely see something looking at Kubernetes being very, very powerful for sure. Definitely.
yeah. So the last thing for Azure Defender is that the Azure Security Center for IoT, Internet of Things, is now called Azure Defender for IoT.
Ah, aptly
And
named.
Microsoft, well, in the last 6 months, acquired CyberX, which was a security company to help
Okay.
with securing those. So that's going to help now with securing those IoT devices.
So all of that intellectual property just got transitioned straight into Azure, and now it's a product for us to use. Thanks very much, CyberX. Um, yeah, who knows if that actually happened, obviously, but yeah, definitely Azure Defender for IoT. So I assume that. Okay, so they already had IoT. They're just rebranding it. Got it. Okay. Dependent on safety. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, okay. So that company specialized in um, networks with customers in sort of what I would classify as dangerous environments. So, health, food, water, energy,
Yeah.
transportation, national defense. So, okay, so they've probably got um, and then okay, there you go, and integration with Sentinel as well. Okay. Yeah, because I imagine that must. Could you imagine, right? If you're building IoT stuff in a security setting, like if you were doing it for, the Ministry of Defense, or you were doing it for the police, they must have IoT networks of sensors. And I can imagine. I don't know that world anymore, but I assume there's massive amounts of IoT in defense. I can imagine, like, surely, equipment is just like a boatload of IoT. So it must
Yeah.
be interesting how they administer that, because all of that IoT, that sensor data must be sensitive information. So it must be a bit of a challenging a challenging problem to harden, secure that, and make sure, especially if you're pushing up into Azure. So yeah, okay, yeah, I've never really thought of how you harden against that sort of thing, especially in those environments. Yeah, no, great,
Yeah.
cool.
So going back to it is kind of Office 365, but it's Azure AD and conditional access. I talk about this quite a lot. Anyway,
Do you
uh,
now? I
yeah.
never knew that.
So I think I talked about one of these before anyway, which was in preview, and it's the insights and recommendations. I think I did it on one of the news reports last time. So it gives you the insight of how you're managing or how your policies are working, the
Okay.
efficiency of them.
Yep.
and being able to troubleshoot them. So it's quite handy to see, this policy's not being hit, and this one is too much, kind of thing. Is it
Yep.
too restrictive or not? Etc.
Yep.
The other thing they've done is on Microsoft Graph, they've opened up the APIs for conditional access, so you can do conditional access policies as code.
Nice. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can automate the creation or the updating of.
Okay.
So that's quite handy for if there's an alert. An example is if there's an alert in Security Center, or sorry, Sentinel, of a user signing in from or being flagged as oh no, the weird activity on the local network is probably the best way to do it, because there's other stuff that can protect against the other stuff.
Yeah.
You could get it to create pop that user into a conditional access rule.
Okay. Got it.
So
Yeah. That's
yeah,
really good.
that's it from me. And again, there was loads of other things in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. If anybody listening hasn't had the time to look at any of the videos, the book of news is a really good place to go and just read and digest all of the different parts, because it links you off to the correct blog posts, it links you off to correct pricing pages, and it generally is really. I didn't actually know, admission here, I didn't actually know that they did a book of news. I didn't even know this until I saw it on Twitter the other day. Somebody said that they were reading through it. They did it for Ignite last year as well. But I don't know if they do it for Build and if they do it for Inspire. Um, but yeah, there was a PDF last year for 2019 Ignite. I know that because when I was preparing for this podcast, I was reading that one to start off with, and I got really confused. I was like, I'm sure this has been out for ages, and it just confused. It absolutely confused me. So yeah, so in the future, if you don't know about it, look out for these books of news because they are very very handy. Yeah, so that's awesome. So I think that's all the news we've got for this week. Sorry that we didn't have like an actual topic that we talked about. Let me just fire up and give you a teaser of what we're going to talk about. I can't remember what the next topic is. Can you, Alan?
Not off the top of my head, no. We did that. We did sort of pre-plan some, didn't we?
We are doing. Next time we're doing ARM templates. So, yeah, ARM templates. If anybody's ever been confused about ARM templates, we're here to make you even more confused about them now. No, we're going to take you through why ARM templates are important, how they're used in Azure, and how they can help you to automate and configure and make your Azure environments more robust. Because we love infrastructure as code, don't we, Alan? That's it's great documentation. It's great. It's a great way to deploy resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it from me. Anything else you want to add, Al?
Just thanks for listening, and the numbers are
Yeah.
still
Oh yeah.
aren't they?
Yeah. I'm gonna bring up our stats because now we're professional. Because on the podcasting day or whatever it's called, international podcasting, there's an international day for everything, isn't there now? Yeah, so we can see that every single time that we push out a new podcast episode, our listens spike, our subscribers spike, and generally the audience interaction and listens per episode are increasing, not just in numbers of people but in velocity of how many people it's reaching. So it seems like and we can see from the stats the episodes that you like more and the episodes you dislike. Without a doubt, let's just talk about it now. Our most popular episode is our first episode, Hello World. But our second one is Learning and Accreditations for Azure and Office 365, which is really interesting, isn't it? Because, it's obviously an area that people want to know about. It can directly affect the job you get, or how certified you are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we did that one quite well as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think anything's quite well when it comes to the podcast, but yeah, it's great, and you guys are still listening, and our numbers are increasing. So, as we said from the start, as long as people are listening, and as long as we can see the metrics growing, we'll continue to do this. We love recording the podcast. It's not just, and as we've said before, it's not about us promoting ourselves or us promoting our companies. It's just about talking about Azure, and now we're even talking about Office 365, so we're going to have to probably like rename the podcast anyway, whatever. So it's just us having a chat. You guys can listen along, and it's just there for everybody to. We're just going to impart our opinions on how we see, the Microsoft technology stack. Cool. All right. Well, that's it from me. So yeah, thanks very much for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. See you next time. See ya.